In this movie, we'll take a look at some of the different ways we can use layers and the layer tools to animate layers in Anime Studio Pro. This is different than the bound layer animation we saw when we were working with the skeletons, how you can select a bunch of layers via the bones and then animate them all at once. This is using layers in a different format, and let me show you what I mean. If you have access to the work files, you can go ahead and open file 0706 and actually see this completed file, but I'll build it right here in front of you. And one of the reasons I wanted to build this file instead of simply have one prepared is so that you can see how we start using some of these tool sets we've been learning about as we start getting into the sophisticated use of Anime Studio Pro. We're going to have a flying saucer that flies across the screen in front of a moon, and then it goes behind the moon and recedes in the distance. So to do that, let's go ahead and change this layer to moon. I'll rename that. And let's draw our moon. I'll grab the circle tool. I'm right here in the center of our screen, and holding down the Option or Alt key, you can draw right from the center of the circle instead of from the outside. And I'll hold the Shift key to constrain that. I want a yellow moon, so I'm going to press the keyboard shortcut Q for Shape Select. And now I can go ahead and just click on a light yellow. Click the center here. Let me come back and click the light yellow and do that in order. And now I want to have a variable thickness on the line, so I'll come up to Draw. There's a keyboard shortcut. Since I'm on a Mac, it's displayed as Command D or Apple D. If you're on the PC, that will be Control D. It pops up a little dialog box and says, what's the minimum and maximum width? I will just accept the defaults. And now we've got a nice kind of thick and thin, a moon with a little character, and certainly we could add some craters to it, but we're not about detailing in this movie. So let's go on to creating the flying saucer now. Create a new layer, a vector layer. I'll double click on it and name it saucer. And enter that. Now I want the saucer off to the side of this, and I want it to fly in front of the moon and then behind it. So I'll back out of my scene a little bit. I will come back to the circle tool, make sure my saucer layer is selected, and then I'll go ahead and draw my saucer right here. Now it happens to have a yellow fill, which I don't really want on this one, so we'll use the Shape Select tool, select that, and pick a gray. Now I will go ahead and reselect the circle tool, and I will draw the top to the saucer, the little window. And press Q again. I don't want that yellow, I want the interior of that to be white. So I'll select that. We'll zoom in just a little bit so we can see that better. And I'll slide over, right click, and move that. I'll lower this with the translation tool, keyboard shortcut T, onto the saucer here. Keyboard shortcut H, I'm going to hide these lower lines so that we only have a black outline going around the shape. Now I will do Command A, Apple A on the Mac, or Control A on the PC to select all, and I'll use the keyboard shortcut for that variable width line, that random width, and accept the defaults again. And now we've got our basic saucer here. The last step for this is to go ahead and reset the origin of the layer. The origin is this little arrow that we see here, and let me zoom in on this just a little bit. It's these two arrows that let you know that this is the 0, 0 coordinate for both X and Y positions, but also Z. So I want to go ahead for the saucer layer and move the origin to the center of the saucer for a reason you will see in just a second. I'll select the origin tool in the layers palette, click on it, and then click in the center of the saucer. And now our origin is right in the center of the saucer, and let's start putting this into play. The first thing we want to do is to get our saucer. Let me zoom back to an appropriate level there. Have our saucer slide right in front of this moon, and then it'll come off from the right and go behind it. So with the translation for the layer translation tool, keyboard shortcut 1, I'll select that, and now I'll move to time 36 in our timeline, which is halfway through this 3-second animation. I'll go ahead and simply drag this left to right. I'll go ahead and use our transport controls, the timeline controls, and move to the very end of the animation, frame 72. And now I'm going to take this and drag it right to left. But I'll want it just about right there. Now you're looking at this and going, well, that's nice, but it's not getting smaller, and it certainly isn't behind the moon. And this is where we get into some of the advanced ways to work with layers in Anime Studio Pro. Earlier, when we were looking at the tool sets, we learned that we can work in X, Y, and Z space with layers, and that's what we'll start doing now. With this last keyframe selected, I'm going to go ahead and set our Z layer up here to -2. Actually, let's go to -3. We'll send that way back. Now it's smaller and it looks like it could be on the other side, but it's still in front. And now since it's hidden itself more behind the moon, I'm going to go ahead and pull this out just a little bit further. It doesn't add another keyframe because we're right at the exact same spot. Now if we scrub the timeline with the timeline control, we'll see our saucer getting bigger and coming back towards us. That's fine. But we need to take care of this issue of it going behind the moon. And that's where we get to one of the cool little production tricks with Anime Studio Pro. Let's pick this up in our next movie.